Alrighty, and here we go. Hello, and this is MSKain. I am bringing to you Master of Orion, the new... the game is still in development, but purchasing it on Steam allows you to participate in early access. Several people have already posted videos online about this. There's a lot of great videos out there. You can watch their Let's Play and see some about this game. I am making my own video. Largely because a lot of people who've been talking about it and who I've talked to about it, they're very familiar with the second game, but they have very limited experience with the very first Master of Orion. And I have played the game, both games, quite extensively. I'm very familiar with the franchise, so I just wanted to get my own view on it in the new game and how it looks so far with its development. So we're going to play a game here. I'm going to split this into a couple parts. First off, I'm just going to compare the game to the, kind of talk about the differences between the two, talk about the previous two games, especially the first Master of Orion, and then I'm going to have another game, just showing some of the game
Altair,
world.
The proud Alkari are an old race
right now,
of avian hominids. Although well known for their
we have
peaceful disposition,
10 races shown, though there are more of these that are going to be coming. Only 6 are currently available for play. The Alkari, Bird People, the Bulrathi,
uncontested. He is the de facto commander
humans,
of all
Mershan,
Alkari
Cylon,
fleets,
and Sakra.
crewed by highly skilled
In addition,
and
4
disciplined
more
soldiers.
original races are
Their
shown
pilots
here, but
are
not
among
yet
the
available.
finest in the
Darlok,
galaxy.
Klakon, Meklar,
Alkari
Silcoid.
religion permeates
And the
every
custom
aspect
race is not
of their culture,
yet available.
and
Eventually
their
we'll be able to
zeal can
customize like in
oftentimes
Master
be
of Orion 2.
confused
Right now we
with
just have
fanaticism.
these, but again, this is
They
like
believe the god of sky
alpha or
created the
maybe
Alkari
beta,
to gaze
but the game
over
still has
every
quite a lot of
horizon, and have been driven into
places
space
to go.
to fulfill that calling.
Now, quite a lot of the game base for this new Master of Orion is actually closer to Master of Orion 2, and I'll go into that. But one of the ways in which the game really is closer to the original is in the racial designs. Most particularly, you can see it in the Alkari, in the Mershan, and in the Cylons. You can see it in a few of these other places as well. The humans also actually look quite a lot like how they were in the original game. But you see in
Under the supervision of
the racial
hailing from the cloudy planet Altair, the proud
images
Alkari
were
are an
greatly
old race
altered in
of
Master of
avian
Orion 2. They
hominids.
had a completely different
Although
artistic
well
team
known for the
coming in there for them.
Under the
And they greatly
supervision
changed
of
the
the
look of the
controller
things,
at
but they're
Mentar,
going a lot
a
closer to the
sprawling
original
network of
looks
silent
with the races here. The Mershan, for instance,
the blazing
interestingly,
savannas
there's a
of
Mershan
Fiers
Empress,
gave
and
rise to the
in
ruthless
Master of
warriors
Orion
known
2, your
as the
Mershan just looks like a
But their
burly
hot temper
leopard man
almost proved to be
warrior
their
king.
undoing.
But in the original
After
Master of
years
Orion,
on the brink
it was
of
much closer to
civil
this
war,
image, and it
the
was
Mershan
actually
Empress
quite
now rules
obviously
over her
female. The
pride
graphics were not
without
great, but
question.
if you looked at the thing, you could see that
Mershans are
Cat Lady
willful
had
and
boobs.
independent,
I mean,
and their
she was
long
female.
history as hunters
And that's what
has
changes.
shaped
The Alkari were made into
Hailing
pterodactyls in
from the
Master of
cloudy
Orion
planet
2, but here they
Altair,
are closer
the
to being
proud Alkari are an
actual
old
birds
race
again.
of ape.
And the Cylons
Under the supervision
had
of the controller at
slightly different
Mentar,
skin color,
a
eye
sprawling
color,
network of
rations,
Cylon
but
communities
generally had this kind of
comprised
look,
the
the
quantum.
shape, maybe a little bit of hair in the
Devoted to
back, but the
unraveling of the
forearms.
mysteries of the
They
universe. Each
just
quantum
looked like almost
investigates
your standard
independently
Star Trek-esque
in order to
alien
contribute
race
to the knowledge
before
of
they
the
added
whole.
some weird
The Cylon
extra nodes and
are a
nodules
peaceful
to their
race,
head to make
and
them
only
look
keep
funky
fleets
and
of
inhuman,
highly
and that was
advanced
about it.
warships as defensive
And
measures.
the human
After ages
in
of
Master of
internal
Orion 2,
conflict,
and here he looks like,
and faced with
your
dwindling
standard
natural
Starfleet captain, I
resources on
guess,
their
from a
home
Star
planet of
Trek-like
Earth,
universe, but in
humanity
Master of Orion
finally
2,
came together
the
to
human
form
emperor,
a consolidated government,
was it supposed to be Patrick
replacing the
Stewart? I don't know, he
many
was a
nations
bald
once
guy in
dotting
more of a
its
robe than
political
anything
landscape.
else. And here he's looking
This
more like
new
uniform.
government-
So we have these character designs. I've played a couple of the races so far, gone through a couple games. Let's go ahead and play the humans today,
After
just
ages
because
of
I haven't really
internal-
finished them yet. Each of the races has a specific color this time around. I don't know if we'll be able to change the color. I really hope so. Before the color flag, you could choose, any color you wanted. Right now, of course, we can only have 6 because of that. And before the shape of the ships was based on the color as well. Although here it might I'm not sure if it's going to be based on racial or color, since right now the two are inextricably interwoven. You can't separate them, so it could be either way. We'll go ahead and go with standard stuff. Difficulty level can't be changed from average right now. Galaxy age. Let's go with a old galaxy. Spiral. Show advanced settings. I usually leave all these on. I don't care about pixel ships. We only get excellence and diplomatic victory types right now. Racial traits, balanced starting conditions, monsters, pirates, random events. Let's start the game, and I'll go into a little bit more about how the game itself is differing between the new and the originals. I have played Master of Orion and Master of Orion 2 quite a lot. Never played Master of Orion 3. I have not heard great things about it, so I don't think I'm missing much. I could always check it out, I guess. As part of buying this Steam, I got the first 3 Master of Orion games on Steam for free. So.
The Human Republic. Fulfilling a dream once thought impossible.
Michael Dorn is our narrator here, the Klingon War from the Next Generation Star Trek. That's quite
and scientists pressing toward the final frontier.
That's not an obvious Star Trek reference.
Planet Earth, they now seek to explore space, discover ancient civilizations, and coexist peacefully with their neighbors from a position of strength and solidarity.
Although it's obviously, especially with the cast they've gotten together, with several Star Trek veterans and veterans from other sci-fi series and
Welcome,
stories.
President. I am...
Yeah, I don't care about what you say. It's quite obvious that you have things there, but
President.
It's not uncommon for people... The Star Trek was the first series to talk about space as the final frontier, but it was just so poetically fitting that it's no surprise that people use it constantly. So this is our star map, and it's the first major difference between the first couple of games, because it dominates the majority of the screen and you just have a couple of other windows around here. And most especially how the map is navigated is pretty different for a lot of reasons. In the original Master of Orion, you only saw a small section of the map, probably about 10 parsecs by 10 parsecs. I don't know if parsecs is even a measurement anymore in this game. I don't think it really is. I guess it could be. Technically, that would be, 3 parsecs away? But much less important now. And the entire map was probably about, hard to say, it was about over 100 parsecs wide and top, so you only saw a small section of the galaxy at a time. You had to scroll by clicking on the screen in a certain direction, didn't have free scrolling and such things. This is early 90s technology, of course, so Master of Orion had a few things like that. Master of Orion 2, on the other hand, showed the entire map at once, and in Master of Orion, each star had only one planet. Maybe. Some of them didn't have any still. In Master of Orion 2, they would actually have solar systems with up to 5 planets in a solar system. And you saw the entire map once, and then you could click on a star to bring up a mini-map of the solar system, which was separately windowed for you to look at it. In this, the map is all one thing, and you can zoom in and zoom out with the mouse wheel, freely scroll through it, just the basic kind of stuff that we take for granted in a lot of our other strategy games now. Pretty minor, but the first thing I really notice about this game as I'm operating it, since I am viewing it through the lens of having played a whole lot of Master of Orion. We have, the other thing that really stood out to me was how we have these hyperlanes, or whatever they are, that connect the different systems together, which is really something that threw me off a whole lot, because it's not uncommon in other 4X games, your space exploration, colonizing, civilization-like games, but it's totally new to Master of Orion, as far as I know, unless they actually did it in Mu 3. In Master of Orion and Master of Orion 2, your ships just had a range that was determined by your technology level at the time and your propulsion technology. You could research higher range engines, which determined how far from your main colonies you could go. If you allied with another race, you could use all of their territory as basically counting as your own for the purposes of exploring and seeing how far you could go out. But that's how you were limited. But otherwise, there was no real way to stop you from going anywhere. You just click a ship, then you click another star system, and you just start traveling there. So there were no borders, nothing like that. It was all based on range. But now they've actually got these star lanes to limit your exploration and determine where you can go. And it's a little off-putting. I mean, I like it. It's a general thing. As I say, they've used it in things before. I played another one about the same time as Mu called Ascendancy, which used star lanes. So it's not an unfamiliar concept by any means, but it's just new to the Mu universe. And so I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, it's just something that was free exploration. But I do like the star lanes concept because it allows you to create borders and hem yourself in a little bit and create your own territory, even though it also means that if you run into a guy who manages to block himself off, you can't get through, So, double-edged sword. There are goods and bads with it. One of the things, too, right now, I don't know if it'll change in the future, but right now everybody begins at the same technology level and you start with a few ships. This is the same as it was in Master of Orion, or not exactly the same, because in the original Master of Orion, you only start with 2 scouts, and then you start with a colony ship. Here, you're building a colony ship, and you build one in 1 turn, regardless of how much production you put in on the first turn. But you also start with a frigate. You didn't have any ships with weapons at the beginning of Master of Orion because you weren't likely to run into anything. There were no space monsters, there were no pirates or anything like that. The only things that were threats were the Guardian if you went to Orion and other players. So you had to build up your own defenses as much as you wanted them. But since they've introduced pirates especially, I think is the reason why they give you a frigate, because if you get unlucky and pirates appear, then you're pretty much doomed. But it's different from Master of Orion 2, because in Master of Orion 2 they actually let you pick your technology level at the start, and you could do standard similar to the original Master of Orion, where you have the basic technology to go into space and colonize other worlds, but you're still starting really early. You could have an advanced game where you already have a couple of systems and a lot of technology, or you could play what I usually like to do, which was pre-warp, where you actually start without technology to go to other planets, and you have to research that as well. Because I usually like playing races that research really fast so I could get a technological advantage, since technology is the most important thing in this game. I like doing pre-warp because that gave me more time to gain a significant advantage. But, I'm fine with as I say, Master of Orion had this too, so it's fine going this way. It'll be interesting if they do add the different thing later on in development, but it's not a game breaker by any means. It's just a neat thing. So your ships have to move around the system, which is different than both games. It takes 1 turn to go from anywhere in the system to anywhere else in the system, regardless of how good your engines are, which is kind of, a little bit of a crappy thing, but whatever. And then it takes so many turns to travel between the star systems. As you can see, it'll take me 4 turns, 1 turn to go there, and then a total of 3 to travel from that system to another. Other things, we look at our planets, and this is one of the ways in which the game is significantly more like Master of Orion 2 than the original Master of Orion. This is the point where that is the case, because in Master of Orion it was super duper simple. You didn't have a planet screen. Instead, you had over on the right side of the screen here, you had an information bar, and whenever you clicked on a planet, you had it in the information bar. Your planet produced so much production based on the number of factories it had, based on its population, and then all of that production that it gave went. Some of it was subtracted automatically for upkeep on ships, on spying how much you decided to donate as an empire into spying, into security against opposing spies, and into colony bases, as well as taxes. You could increase the tax revenue to create a base pool of funds for emergencies, and that subtracted from your planet's base production. All the rest of it was divided into 5 sections that all added up to 100, and if you decreased 1 bar, it would increase one of the other ones, usually the bottom at research. While if you added to one, it had to take away from another, so you had to adjust these slides. They were ships, defenses, including missile bases and planetary shields, industry to produce more factories so that you could produce more. There was a limit to how many factories you could build on a planet that would increase as your technology went up, and ecology, which was used to control pollution from factories, and in order to increase population as well, you could just dump resources into that. And finally, you had research. All the rest that didn't go into those first 4 went into research. But here, in Master of Orion 2, they made it a lot more like Civilization, which it was kind of based on anyway. You had so many different buildings that you could build, and then you would add them to... you would build them at a time, and they take so much production to build, etc., etc. And then you have so many units of... Instead of just having base production, you have so many units who can devote themselves to certain things, like production, food, and research. This is all pretty much the same as it's been since the beginning of Mu 2. And very similar to how they run things in the Civilization games as well. One of the slight changes from Mu 2 is that there was a fourth semi-hidden stat that you couldn't really control besides your research, food, and production, and that was growth. There were certain buildings you could build that would increase the rate of growth of your colony, but otherwise it was kind of set by your terrain and you couldn't do anything to change that. But here, they made it more like Civilization, where food... creating more food instead of being sold off for money or being used to help colonies with less food, the more food you produce, the faster your population grows. So apparently in the future, people reproduce by being fed. I don't know. That seems to be how it works with this kind of setup. But in any case, so now that there's that, it kind of simplifies things, and a lot of things like the cloning center that used to increase your population growth directly instead just gives you an opportunity to just reduces the amount of food required in order to grow your population. Otherwise, it's similar. I really like how they do these things here, showing the size of the planet based on its possibilities, biomes, minerals. One of the things they've talked about in recent patches is how they're going to create bigger differences between the biomes. That's one of the things they're working on right now directly. So that's planets. The research tree.
Scientists are eager to start.
Let's go ahead and look at the tree so we can see that. Research is something that's changed a decent amount from the first couple of games. It's kind of evolved, I guess you could say, because it's a lot of the things are similar to how Mu 2. They're similar advancements to how they were in Mu 2. Mu 2 seems to be the baseline for most of what they've done, which is fine because that was a great game. But it's definitely a departure further from along the lines closer to Civilization than what the original Mu had. In the original Mu, similar to how you had so much production on a planet that was divided into 5 different sections, you actually had 8 different technology trees, and your research could be devoted to one tree in particular or spread evenly across them. And in Mu 2, they kind of had the same thing with those 8 specific areas you could research, but those research areas, you had to choose one that you were focusing on. And then before, in the original Mu, the very interesting thing was that the technology you got was random. And what I mean by that is when you pick something to research, you're researching it, but whether it appears in your list to research was totally random. And there were a lot of things that were really necessary or useful that you could only randomly get. It was kind of absurd how random everything was. You might go through an entire game and only get like 2 beam weapon upgrades. You might go through another game and never get the technology to colonize worlds that were hostile, like Inferno or toxic ones, because each different increasing difficulty of hostile world required its own brand new colony plant, and there you had to do research in order to get the colony base that could colonize a world that was barren, and then tundra, and then dead, and then inferno, and then toxic, and then radiated. So if you never got like any of the later ones, you were stuck if you had planets near there. Of course, I mentioned range before. You had certain ranges, and you might not ever get the technology to go beyond 6 range. It was just totally random. In Mu 2, every technology was available. It all progressed in a linear amount. However, most of the time, for most races, you could only pick one of the technologies in a tree to research, and then to get the others, you had to acquire them. I never liked doing that. I always took the creative feat, because you could customize your races, and of course the Cylons, the researchers, had creative to begin with, and I always liked the Cylons in science anyway. And as I say, I'm really a big science guy, and I hated not having everything. So I always took creative because that was by far the best ability in the game. Even after they patched the game later and made it more expensive, I still considered it an absolute must-have because, you know, sometimes that you're choosing between two good things just isn't worth it. You need just about everything. I don't know. There's plenty of people have played it without that, but that's just my mindset of playing. Now here, finally, coming back to the actual game we're in, this has a totally different thing. It's a tree much closer to what Civilization has. As you can see, we advance on it. Although, as you can see, it still is kind of divided into these 4 trees: government, physics, biology, engineering. And sometimes they overlap a little bit. Genetic engineering is part of engineering and biology, for instance. But for the most part, besides this little bit of overlap, you're still sticking to mostly one tree. In government, you know, for money and such things, nice development buildings. Engineering, you're getting weapons and fleets and things. And biology, of course, you're doing things for genetic mutations, improving your planet and stuff. As we'll see if we get far enough along in actually playing the game in the next section, you'll see certain points where there's the slash. And this is similar to how those things worked in Mu 2 when you had to choose between these. You only get one of these technologies and you have to choose them. So tough choices sometimes, especially down the line when you're getting high-level engines and you have to choose between engines or bombs. Actually a much harder choice than you'd think, and I'll get into that later. But so this is the new technology tree, but a lot of the technologies are actually really similar to the ones, and if you played Mu 2 a lot, you'll recognize these. You really will. There are a few new things, but for the most part, that's the baseline. And again, nothing wrong with that. They did a lot of stuff great there. Go ahead and finish up engineering.
Fantastic.
Yes, yes. Get out of my way, lady. Okay, what else can I talk about where the difference is? Path to victory we can talk about slightly. Technological victory and economic victories do not exist right now. Those are definitely things that are adapting from Civilization, because these are the 3 traditional things you've always had. You haven't really even had an excellence victory in previous Master of Orions. There were really only 2 ways to win: either conquest victory, destroying all the other races, or getting the diplomatic victory of being elected as the Supreme Chancellor, which isn't so diplomatic as just you're the biggest, baddest guy and you have all the votes yourself. And that's especially how it works right now in this game. I'll get into that again. So these other things that they're going to add do sound really neat, so that'll be cool. Ship design we can go into a little bit. This is once again very similar to Mu 2. In the original Mu, you had 6 ship designs, and that included things like colony ships. There were no transports or troop transports. Instead, when you had your screen on the planet and you're transferring people, you just have a little button down here to transfer units to another planet. And if you transfer from one of your planets to another of your planets, you're just shuttling civilians to try and spread your population around to help out a beginning planet, for instance. And if you send them to an enemy planet, they turn into troop transports. You're sending millions of civilians down to conquer the enemy planet. And when you do that, rather than taking the enemy race captive, you're actually genociding the entire planet and wiping out all their people with your own land forces and then replacing them with your own. That's a little crazy. I kind of like the fact that you can take over other races in Mu 2, and they do that in this as well. So, but colony ships and scouts and warships were all, you know, combined in one, and you could have a warship with colony resources on it as well if you really wanted to. But they were all part of 6 ship designs, and you couldn't have any old ships. If you wanted to upgrade a ship design and you already had all 6 full, that means you had to delete an entire ship and design and then scrap all the ships that were part of that design and then build over from scratch. The good news was that ships were a little bit easier to build. I mean, you had 4 sizes: small, medium, large, and huge. Huge ones could take 10 years or more, even on a high production planet, while ones that got progressively smaller you could build a lot of. You could build hundreds of small ships in a turn if you had a really high productive planet focusing on building ships. So you didn't just have, you know, a ship combat, you had fleet combat. And when you had your combat menu, you had the hundreds or thousands of small ships as a single unit moving around the map, and all of its guns were firing together. Then, you know, progressively for larger ones, you'd still have your fleet of large ships as a single unit once again. But in Mu 2, each ship is individual, and you can have so many ship designs, but then if you update a ship design, it doesn't affect your ships that are out there, though you can take them in and upgrade them to those specific points. The one bad news that I can see, it's simplified, but not really great right now. Not as customizing. In Mu 2, you could customize ships individually. Not only could you have designs and then produce them, but if you decided to refit an old ship, you didn't have to design it just like one of your upgraded design plans. You could actually make it a totally new ship and add totally different stuff to it, which kind of had a neat little upgraded tactical sense of its own, because you could make specific missile ships or bomber ships for very specific missions without dedicating an entire design level to it. But in here, as far as I've seen anyway, at least as far as they've allowed us to do, you can upgrade ships very easily to a new design, although it costs a lot of money. But that seems to be all you can do. There isn't really a button that I've seen for, customize this ship and add some new things to it. Bit of a disappointment. Maybe they'll add that later on. As say, this is still very much in development, but that was a neat thing. And that's really it. Otherwise, the game runs really similarly. You explore, you colonize, you try to become the ruler of the galaxy and develop better technology so you can build better ships and build better planets and colonize more planets and try and outdo everybody else. So I'm going to end this video here and now start a new one where we actually play the game.